In this video, I'm going to show you something so gastronomically big that it will leave you sweating on your knees, begging for air. And honestly, you might regret having seen it. And I promise you will not be the same afterwards. Not only emotionally and not only mentally, but literally, physically, you probably won't ever be the same again. Right now, the price of Bitcoin has actually slipped below the 21-day moving average. And for the past few weeks, I've been talking about a potential pullback, and I do want to explore that scenario. I do want to talk about Bitcoin receiving a pullback, but there's something greater, something bigger that is also happening right alongside that, which one, strengthens the case for it, but two, ends up turning into a switcheroo, mega bullish surprise that I'm sure some of you are literally foaming at the mouth even thinking about. So if you love gains and you love changing the world one pump at a time, hit that like, hit that subscribe. And without any further ado, I simply cannot hold back this bust any longer. So one of the first things you might notice, obviously Bitcoin is slipping below the 21-day moving average, but that's not what I want to actually start this off with. Two things before we get into that. Number one, Kevin Svensson posting the Bitcoin dominance daily chart, which we do see slipping below this uptrending level of support that has been intact for literally the past year, going back to December of 2022. And this is our very first breach below this. Now, what does this mean, right? What does it mean that Bitcoin is now slipping below this Bitcoin dominance level of support? Well, if we switch to the actual chart, you can see clearly it's a little bit of a big dumpy, right? And I believe it's possible we see this start to escalate big time. Now, if you look at a lot of these altcoins, they're also down. Today, Bitcoin's down like 3%. A lot of these top alts are also down around that, some even a little bit more than that. But why is this significant? Well, if we actually look at the entire cryptocurrency market minus Bitcoin, minus Ethereum, so the total three crypto chart, basically the pure chart of altcoins, we have just received a cross on this 10-day chart for the first time since activating Giga bull mode back in the last bull market. And it comes after about 7 green 10-day charts, 70 straight days of gainers on the 10-day chart, 7 candles on the 10-day chart of massive greenage. And last time we got this was the bearish cross, and this was back in June of 2022, which absolutely pretty much brought altcoins to their knees and beyond. Absolute dump fest, complete garbage, complete just the reach around diddling that, is one for the ages. The last time we had the bullish cross that we've just received on these altcoins, we have to really take it back all the way to June of 2020, right? About 2 years before that bearish cross. So basically, to summarize that, we had 2 straight years of massive alt gainers before we received the death cross dumpulation. And here we have this cross going all the way back here. Altcoins have so much room to start making up, and I think this is one of the first signals we are going to receive of that. Now, before we really talk about that anymore, I think it is really important to talk about the most important, and that is Bitcoin, which right now, in my opinion, has that potential, as we talked about for the last few weeks. Again, these, for example, like a bearish divergence, it takes time to play out. I made multiple videos talking about how long after receiving this bearish divergence it takes really to see a breakdown. But we have the potential here to actually see Bitcoin have a pullback down to the exact same levels that I've been talking about for weeks here, so I'm not going to really talk about them too much. In fact, my cursor is right at those levels as we speak. But Bitcoin absolutely has the chance of either trading sideways for an extended amount of time here or receiving a pullback. In fact, price action does look a little weak. We actually just set a lower high, as we've been talking about a couple of days ago, from the high initially set back on December 5th. So price action is dwindling a little bit for Bitcoin on shorter time frames. There is plenty of evidence that upside momentum for Bitcoin is dwindling. Specifically looking at Bitcoin's weekly chart as well. That's pretty big. We see that the MACD has been crossing bearish. We have an RSI cross actually coming up as well. RSI was on the weekly chart the most overextended we've seen of this entire year. In fact, it's about as overextended. If we go back to May of 2019, in fact, the RSI is at a very similar level to that. So that's pretty telling as well. Anyway, the point being, as I've been saying, I believe that Bitcoin topped out for the year at about 45,000. And we have not gone above that since. That's what I've been saying for a couple of weeks now. I think that basically the local top is in. I'm still extremely bullish on Bitcoin. I'm still extremely bullish on crypto, but I just think that the market needs to cool off. And that's really not saying anything too crazy. Now, we're finally, though, after quite a long time holding on this 21-day moving average, we're finally now dipping below it. And I think that it's possible we see a sub 40K Bitcoin in the next few weeks. Now, factoring in a Bitcoin spot ETF, how will that affect price? Well, two options here. In about 2 weeks, basically we'll have a decision on these Bitcoin spot ETFs. If they get approved, I think that Bitcoin will have stronger price action and the space will get more fundamentally bullish. And I think a lot of institutional adopters and people that have never invested in Bitcoin will start investing once it goes live, probably in a couple weeks or a couple months. If it is approved, probably a couple of weeks afterwards. But if the spot ETFs, and this is a scenario you have to be thinking about, if the spot ETFs, if Gary comes up with some new reason why we can deny them or something like that, I personally don't think it will happen, but if it does happen, I still think Bitcoin's going to enter a massive bull market in 2024, but I think that would absolutely dump the price of Bitcoin in the short term. Now, I'm just talking about that scenario because it's a realistic scenario. I don't think it's the most likely scenario, but it's definitely one that, right? Why pretend? I'm going to get comments of people being like, oh, there's zero shot that it gets denied. Guys, I mean, first of all, nobody knows that, right? I understand you might be emotional because you just need your crypto to go up, but it doesn't always work like that. So just relax. I mean, it probably will get approved. Everything will probably go pretty smoothly, but just simply thinking about the possibility that it doesn't, just thinking about the possibility it might be bearish is not a bad thing, okay? So I feel like I'm talking to less than like 5% of my audience, but I mean, hey, it's worth it because sometimes people like freak out. But anyway, with that, before we continue with crypto, I want to look the stock market. SPX, honestly, not looking too bad today. It's up about 1/3%. The DXY is on its last legs. Say they start cutting rates in 2024, which is very likely. The DXY has so much lower to go. I've been saying this for a while. It's absolutely, I think, just at the beginning of its dumpiness, which historically has benefited Bitcoin's price action. But overall, I think that this current setup in the altcoins, I think, is very strong. Now, I think that we might have to get a dump over with first, or like I said, maybe just sideways. It doesn't necessarily have to dump very strong. The more important chart is what I mentioned at the beginning here, which is that most likely, I think that Bitcoin dominance is going to be dropping over the next couple of months. That doesn't mean it's done completely pumping, right? We could pump tomorrow and then this could be part of a bigger downtrend, but I think Bitcoin dominance has really exhausted itself. And there might be some people watching that don't like that, but again, if you don't like it and you're going to type an emotional comment, don't, because you don't be emotional, okay? Don't be emotional. That's one of the number one rules of crypto. Everything that I try to talk about is literally not emotion, right? I'm just looking at stuff, and sometimes people get upset, and most people don't, though. Because most people that are in crypto at this point, if you're seasoned, you're not going to be an emotional person whenever something happens. Now, obviously, Bitcoin's golden cross is showing up. Bitcoin dumping into a golden cross and then a couple weeks later pumping again is a totally realistic, in fact, happens more than not scenario for the crypto space. So with that being said, I'm extremely bullish on Bitcoin. However, I do think that in the short term, it is possible we see some blood. It's possible we see some fear. And it's honestly overdue at this point. The market is better for it. The market will have a healthier long-term uptrend possible if we shake some of the FOMO out of the market. That's just how this market works. So with that being said, price action is dwindling a little bit, but I think that in 2 weeks, say we get those Bitcoin spot ETFs, it could be like this never happened, and it will be. I personally think that, I mean, look at the last bull market. Right before the last bull market, was it up only? Was it pumping only? Right? Absolutely not. Look what happened before this last massive run. Multiple shakeouts. In fact, the biggest shakeout maybe crypto and the stock market have seen in decades, which was in 2020. But besides that, yeah, there were multiple shakeouts, and it's normal, it's healthy, and it's not something to get emotional about. And sign up with my links to Phoenix or BitGet below if you're interested in obtaining Bitcoin, getting altcoins, any kind of trading. Massive options below. And without any further ado, that's it for me.